Right, thanks for attending everybody. It's just gone 5 o'clock. Everybody settle down. Obviously I shall do the fire procedure. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once outside the building, please gather outside the Yorkshire Bank and opposite side of the road. Exit by the door which you entered the room, or fire exits which are clearly indicated by the standard green exit signs. If you need any assistance evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of the staff. Also make sure your mobile phones are turned off or sent to silent. The chair to advise the meeting of all the party minutes will be recorded for future broadcast. I believe there's the official council. Come on, the button's been pressed, and Councillor Condicor has informed us that he'll be recording it as well. Okay. Could we have apologies, please?
Councillor Brindley, Chair, and Councillor Grant is substitute.
Okay, any other apologies? I know myself I'm going to leave for 7 o'clock. Right, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd November. Can I hear someone? Can I sign them as correct record?
Agreed.
Okay. Declarations of interest. After the ones that are already being circulated. Okay. And it's public consultation. What I intend to do with the panel's lesson is that Mr. Goss is here to speak on item number 7. My intention would be to take that first, and then we'll take the car parking. There's a second issue, and Mr. Gross, do you, also we have the portfolio holder here as well. I intend for the officers to speak to the report. Mr. Gross can have his 3 minutes, and then I intend, then the panel will be asking matters of clarification for you, if there has to be any clarification. Then I shall ask the portfolio holder to come forward and go through the same procedure. You can say what I was going to say. Persons then qualify that afterwards, and then we can go to debate. And that, if the panel finds that the best way to deal with it.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah. So, Brent.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Okay, so the report that's, I think, starting page 11 of your papers. We can go through some key points in relation to the Gresham Road depot site, and makes the point really that an awful lot of the information related to this site is contained in Appendix 1, which is a copy of the Managing Director's report that was first presented to the Council meeting on the 7th of December 2016. So in terms of where we're at with the actual works on site now, they commenced on the 5th of December, just before, well, 3 weeks before Christmas actually. An overall completion of the works scheduled to occur by the end of this year, 2017, in terms of the total package of works. But in terms of actually moving from St Mary's to Gresham Road, that will be starting before the end of those works, and we'll integrate the two and get things moved across. In terms of progress on site at the moment, and myself and Councillor Pomfret were actually on site this morning, we are with 3 days behind schedule at the moment, but that is 3 days in terms of internal works, which the contractor is very confident of picking that up over the remaining build, not least because their view, or the site manager's view, is there's some fairly comfortable timescales in for first and second fix of electrics and heating, and because we've adopted a modular construction on the internal offices, it's actually a lot easier to fit out than it is on a traditional brick and block build there. The other plus point as well is that had we been building in block and brick today, well in fact we wouldn't have been building today, it was too cold, it was -1 when we were there this morning. Geneva temperature of +2, and hopefully increasing during the day to be able to build. So we wouldn't have been doing it where, because these prefabricated panels are wooden panels with internal insulation in, then they're able to progress on site there. So that's on track, all but 3 days, and we will catch that back. That's the internal works, and external works are well underway. And one of the most significant bits of the external works that he's now done is the attenuation tank for drainage is in place. And just very briefly and very simply, what that is, it's effectively a great big bathtub. So when you get rain on site, the storm water drains into that big bathtub, and then can drain at a more slow rate into the Severn Trent drainage system. So you've got a bit of capacity there to stop the drainage system getting blocked up and the flooding. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's essentially what it is. It's a bathtub that's sealed underground. But that's basically what that is. And that in itself is one of the pieces of work that was not identified that would be needed when we first purchased the site. And the reason why it wasn't identified there is that, in broad terms, the hard surfaces on that site, tarmac, roof, etc., are the same surface area, give or take, now and on the design when they were when we bought it. And any hard surface, rainwater can't permeate through any hard surface. And I'm stating obviously we can't permeate through any hard surface. So the assumptions that were made when we bought the site was that, as it was an existing site, and we weren't putting any more hard surfaces there, that the drainage on that site must have been okay to cope with the rainfall, as it hadn't flooded. And probably from a practical sense that's probably still true, but the requirements now in terms of flood prevention and flood mitigation mean that the Environment Agency and Severn Trent required that attenuation tank to be installed there, even though it was on a brownfield site that had tarmac and concrete and roofs there. So that's quite a big chunk of work that's been done, and work is well underway with starting to create the additional circulation road that runs alongside the A444 there. So essentially we're on track and things are going well on site. Paragraphs 4, 4 and 4.5 of the report just really make the point that councils, and this is not unique to us in any shape or form, councils don't tend to change their operational depots very often, and our predecessor organisations purchased St Mary's Road depot, or the land where it sits, in 1871. And it's been an operational depot from at least the late 60s, possibly before that, so it's 50 years worth of life there. And we'd expect that from Gresham Road, and that's in line with what other councils would expect there. So in terms of looking at costs and savings and other implications of the move, then that 50-year timescale, that seems to be a very legitimate one to look at there. 4.6 just makes the point that had we not moved from St Mary's, and notwithstanding that St Mary's is in broad terms in the wrong place, it's not in the centre of the borough. It's surrounded by residential homes, so it's not really the place you'd want to have your operational depot. It's been lacking investment for many years, and one of the things I was told when I first started here nearly 20 years ago was that we really need to move out of St Mary's Road depot. And anecdotally, I was told by one of our longest serving employees when they moved from Bedworth Urban District Council, when the two were raising, they moved into St Mary's Road. It would be a temporary accommodation until the council found a new depot site, and the amalgamation was happened in 1974. So it has been underinvested in, and we were looking at having to spend £1.5 million on that site over the next 5 years to catch up and bring it into a decent state, but that would have still meant it was in the fundamentally in the wrong place. Paragraph 4.7 just makes the point that at the time of the purchase of Gresham and the initial financial implications, there was a need to act quickly to take advantage of it being on sale. We've been looking for many years for somewhere around the Bermuda area because it's in the middle of the two towns, has a good access to the A444 and is in an industrial commercial area, so you haven't got the issues with domestic properties. So it was about, was it the right price? Is it in the right place, which it is, and was it large enough to an operational depot? So they were the key considerations, and so the initial assessment of what works needed to be carried out was done as best as we could within that time scale there. But those are the key things. Is it in the right place, which it is? Is it big enough? And is it a reasonable price for the site itself, effectively as a land purchase? And then 4.8 is in some ways perhaps not the most meaningful thing, I would say, because every council depot is different up and down the country, reflects their local circumstances. But in terms of some kind of context, the Lower House Farm Household Waste and Recycling Centre facility, which Warwickshire County Council and North Warwickshire Borough Council share and make joint use of. The cost of that to actually build it, never mind the land purchase, was 3.2 million. And 10 years ago, Bridge North District Council, and I know that because one of our officers, Glenn McGrandle, was there at the time when this took place, and had some old files it kept from being as part of the project there. Spent over 1.6 million on building a new depot on the land they already owned, which was a smaller depot than the one we will end up with Bridge North District Council being a smaller authority ourselves. So that gives some kind of context, as best it can be, really, I think, on what you'd expect it to cost to create a municipal council depot. Just in terms of Appendix 1, which was the Managing Director's report, and on to page 2 and 3 of that, which is page 14 and 15 of your papers, there's bullet points there about the sort of key aspects of why there's been an increase from the original costing proposals to the position where we are now. And that information has been in the public domain for some weeks now. So that, really, Chair, was all I intended to say as an introduction and presenting the item.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Goss, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Chair. I apologise if you've heard a lot of this. I'm only just starting to catch up with some of the issues, I guess, around the council. As a taxpayer, or council taxpayer, I think it's better to say, I was absolutely gobsmacked at this unexpected increase in the size of this budget, this 1.4 million. It's bound to set alarm bells going. You think, well, you can't run a simple project like this. What else are you going to overspend on in the future? So that's a little bit of the background. If you look at the report the gentleman just referred to, and look at paragraph 4.7, It talks about at the time of purchase of the Gresham Road, initial financial implications and issues were considered. Plus, best endeavours were made against short timescales to identify the work scope. There's a couple of points there. One, I think already at very early stages there's intense pressure to get on and do something and probably not do the right thing. Second thing is, what are best endeavours? What does your best endeavour process say then? Where does that come from? Because I don't see any evidence of any process. If I move on to the Appendix 1 and look at 3.4, quoting 3.4, the selling agents confirmed that their clients had accepted the Borough Council's offer that was significantly below the asking price on the basis that the transaction would be completed quickly. Well, how many of us fall for that sort of scam when you negotiate on our houses or something like that, buying and selling? The MD was an ex-contract manager, I believe, yeah? And what do your contract procedures say? That, if you get this offer and says do it quickly, you just do it, you just jump around and cause bloody mayhem. So again, there's already time pressures put on there, I think, because you haven't followed the process. If you look at 3.5, at the time of the purchase and given the need to act quickly, a necessary light touch assessment of the actions. Again, we come back to process. What does your process say about light touch assessments? Does it exist? Have you just worked around the processes you have? I suspect that that's the case in truth. If we move down and look at 4.1, we can hardly believe that to create more panic and mayhem, it seemed the MD's decided to throw in a bit of Brexit. He's clairvoyant. He's one of the few who understood what was going to happen when Brexit occurred. But again, because of that, more pressure on the people doing this job. Don't follow Brexit. Don't follow process. Just get on and, I guess, do what I say, because it's too important not to do. So where does that get me to sort of, I guess, summarise? Well, before I summarise, the last 5 lines of this, because that's the other point. Oh, sorry, I've got it. But just a very quick summary, I would say. It just smacks to me of absolute panic and lack of capability that's got this council in this place. And I'd like to know if your business improvement team is doing something to take lessons learned from this and make sure it doesn't happen in the future. Thank you.
Any points of clarification for the speaker? Any panel members? No? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pomfret, would you come forward?
Just to start off with, I'd like to say that if we hadn't bought Gresham Road, chances are that would be our only chance in many years to come. So it's not quite as simple a decision as has been implied, I don't think. Anyway, however we got here, I'm absolutely sure that the right decisions have been made about the purchase, the work being done now, and the fact that none of this will affect service continuity. And this is what matters to residents, along with keeping costs down. Let me emphasise that the prime reason for moving is to save money by making it more economic to provide our services, and this is undoubtedly will be the case. There's no doubt it's a very good investment in terms of capital. It has already gone up in value, and also very important revenue costs. We've done this very successfully with the council house, and we're doing the same thing with the depot. And I'd like to thank all the officers directly involved in the project, and also, and perhaps especially, employees who took their time to be involved in consultation, many different employees who work at or from the depot. This is a very complicated project and overlaps in time with the final implementation of the ICT strategy and agile working, which both had to be planned into the depot whilst being implemented in the town hall. Now, some people don't think we should listen to our employees. I disagree with that. And considering inputs from all viewpoints is very time consuming, especially as they may come into conflict, and the process may require that decisions are revised and revised again, and that certainly was done. And this is only right because once this build is finished, we are stuck with it. With a few tweaks along the way, I'm sure, but for a long time, as Brent has already said, probably more than 50 years. So it's a case of make haste slowly, not rushing, and get it right. Of course, as always, there are lessons to be learned. Perhaps we should have brought in some outside expertise at some point. This may have sped the process, but my view is that you can only decide exactly what you're going to do, just as a moving house, when you've got the property you want in the back. I know that the amounts of money involved are immense, but they are well spent and controlled in terms of time, as Brent has already intimated, and in the terms of keeping costs down as we go along. And they are to the short and long-term benefit of residents, which I think is the crucial thing in terms of both money and providing our services. Thank you, Chair.
Any points of quality for the portfolio holder, please? Councillor Condy-Clark.
Yeah, we're 20 months into this process, and this is the first time it's hit the scrutiny panel. You've had these conversations, you said, with staff at some point, and
I haven't had them.
no, as a process. Why didn't you consider actually telling the wider body of council or scrutiny panel early on, so we could actually talk about this earlier, rather than this after the horse has bolted?
Well, if the scrutiny panel wants to scrutinise what's going on, then I'm sure the scrutiny panel could ask for it to come before them. I don't think it's up to cabinet members to decide what scrutiny panels should do.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned that you were aware about the costs being high and the figures that we're talking about being sums which most members of the public couldn't dream of having. When did you become aware of the costs escalating as a cabinet portfolio holder?
Well, I find it difficult to remember sometimes what I did last week. I wouldn't like to say exactly, but shortly before the managing director issued his paper, I would say perhaps a week before that. I knew that there were issues around costings and so on, but the scale of any increase I was unaware of.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes, Jim.
So, you say you only became aware of it a week or so before the managing director. What oversight was being given both from a cabinet perspective and from an officer perspective of the running costs over this 18-month period when we were evaluating what works needed to be done to the depot?
Well, I think I've already intimated that there was a constant process of evaluation going on because various things were changing. There was the state of the contract with City Council, for example. That was only finalised at the very last moment, so we couldn't really count on that not being required. That's MOTing and servicing of HGVs, or at least the servicing of HGVs. There's also other issues to do with procurement and what potentially ICT may be able to do. So lots of issues only came to be resolved, as I understand it, in the last few weeks before the managing director was able to issue his notification.
Yeah, just following on from that, you mentioned that there are potentially lessons to be learned from this exercise, which I think the committee would agree with. Would you agree with me that one of the lessons to be learned that perhaps is that we need to keep a tighter hold on finances as they go along in such large-scale projects, and the cabinet members need to be kept more apprised of the situation going forward from officers?
Well, if I was doing it again, I would certainly expect that to happen, yes. But as I think has already been mentioned, councils don't move depots very often. We were also in the middle of the moving out of the council house. But certainly, yes.
Thank you.
Any other panel? Has Arjun spoken before? No. Councillor Condy-Clark.
Yeah, can I just come back on that? I mean, the cost trebled over the period of a week or so, as far as you knew, and it would be useful when we do this emergency decision, actually a day or two before, actually just letting opposition members know, so we're not spooked by it, because that does actually put our backs up when we find out late. So,
Well, I can understand that, but it wasn't my decision. It was the managing directors who need to point that out.
Okay. Anybody else? No. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, we'll proceed to the debate then. Any questions on report. Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, it's obviously, if you go back to 3.5, at the time of the purchase and given the need to act quickly, I mean, obviously the moving quickly and the detailing of 625,000 as additional works, turning out to be 1 million plus, is a problem in the public eyes, you know. However, I think the council have acted correctly in the purchasing and acting correctly in the way they went about it, although with hindsight it would be great to sort of say, yeah, this will sit on the table for a while, we've got this person that wants to sell us this place at Gresham Road, we'll go and do all the long-winded analysis, etc., and we'll bring it back, and then 6 months later or 7 months later the offer's off the table. Sometimes councils have to act, you know, looking at the longer term, and yes, take a little bit of embarrassment at the present moment in time, because it says here, like the gentleman said, Mr. Gus said, you know, a light touch assessment. That was the decision that this council made, and maybe that's caused the embarrassment. But believe me, if we took a longer term assessment, right, we might not have got the place. And at the end of the day, this is going to save us £71,000 a year over the long term. And we're talking an additional £800,000 worth of borrowing over the long term. And capital receipt of St Mary's Road can go back into the pot to offset any borrowing that we do. It sounds, you know, to the public, Mr. Goss perfectly right, that, hey, where did it all go wrong? But sometimes, in my view, the long-term picture of moving out St Mary's and oversight with light touch assessment of additional costs was put us in this position. But this council, long-term, has made the right decision, and I'm quite happy with it. How unfortunate the scenario might seem of additional costs. It's also said that Brent said here that part of the biggest cost is the environmental agency that wasn't foreseen. You know, okay, these additional costs happen, but I go back to the original reason. The opportunity was there. The council had to ask, light touches embarrassed us, but it's the right decision.
Councillor Condicott.
Yeah, there is obviously some debate over purchasing, but I think that's a minor debate. Whether it was 1.4 million or 1.2 million or what, it's not what happened 20 months ago, or approximately, when we decided to buy it. And yeah, I don't think any councillor is suggesting we didn't move. It's what's happened in the 20 months that's gone. Yeah, 20 months is an awful long while, and we have a urgent, have to be decided within a week decision to authorise the trebling of the fit-out cost. So it's what's happened in the 20 months we're concerned about, so that when we do similar projects, we actually have points at which councillors are involved to say the costs of this are starting to rise. Even when it went from 600,000, you thought it was going to be over £1 million. Start to say, yeah, can we discuss this? Because one of the things is what's in Gresham Road. Yeah, what are we taking there? It's going to have a small call centre, I believe. It's going to have the climbing wall. Yeah, we should have been having the discussion as the costs rose. Do we actually want all these things at Gresham Road? There's obviously things that are vans and trucks and things that need to be at Gresham Road, but there's also things that might actually either not need to be at Gresham Road, or things that could move to Gresham Road as a second phase to try and, you said it was a complicated project, a big bang project. We also have, you said at the beginning, this will be completed this year. That sounds like another 6 month slip to me, because this year ends in December 2017. So it would be really useful if you brought a Gantt chart or something, so we can see what we get through 2017, just to see, effectively have some scrutiny over the project, because at the moment we don't know what we're getting on what month or even what quarter at the moment. Also, there's a move to agile working. Staff are able, some of them, to take their vans home. That might be something that happens more in the future. That might affect how much parking we have, and that then affects the scale of the underground tanks and things. So it is really useful to do scrutiny. You say in your report how much more other depot moves have cost, and these £3.2 million and £1.6 million. So alarm bells should have rang that 610,000 wasn't plausible anyway. And there's so many little minor things where we get shut out, and we don't think we need to call it in because we don't get the feedback. At the County Council, every quarter, there's a report of all the major capital projects, and a little line saying, this is going well, this is going dreadfully. We don't do many capital projects, but would be really useful if there are maybe only 3 capital projects for the whole council that are actually big enough to be multi-million pound capital projects, to actually have on the quarterly performance report a line saying how well it's going and if there are likely to be any significant cost and timing overruns. Because that is so useful. It doesn't go from 600,000 to 2 million instantly. And at the County Council, there's all sorts of projects, car park moves, Bermuda Connect project, all sorts of projects, which every quarter we can just see a line saying, yeah, it's going okay, or no, it's starting to drag out in time. So I think one lesson and maybe one recommendation as committee could be to put on our quarterly performance report just a one-liner about how our capital projects are going, so we don't suddenly find a 1 year £600,000 project becomes a 2 year £2 million project. We do need that scrutiny, because otherwise we are going to have to guess and call things in, and it's far better to actually have some feedback to us that the depot move is going okay. I mean, I do believe there's a massive savings from having a environmentally sound, well insulated, a modern depot. There's no question over that. The questions are over how this project is managed, how it goes, and what opportunities have been missed to think of ideas, think out the box. Do we move as many staff there? Some of the call centre staff, are they better somewhere like Civic Hall in Bedworth, where we've got some spare space, so they've got car parking there, rather than building more car parking at the depot? So I don't know if that's an idea or not, because we never got to that scrutiny, but we need to be careful of these projects. And we've got the empty council house there. There'll be a procedure for that. We've got various housing projects. We need to get these projects better scrutinised. And so I think the final point is, can we just have a bit of clarification on what we're getting through 2017 in terms of your deliveries?
Right. Yes,
it actually says in the report, and I believe I did say, it will be completed by June 2017. That's the completion date for all the works on site, construction works. And at the moment we're 3 days behind schedule, but we will catch those up. So there's no indications. And to be honest, the reason why I'm particularly confident about that is we've now dug almost all the holes in the ground we need to, and we certainly dug all the big holes in the ground. And anyone involved in construction will tell you that the issues, 99% of the time, are about getting out of the ground. Once you're out of the ground, it's a lot easier to know what you've got to do and how those things work out. So that's the top step. There is a Gantt chart. So, Sheriff, if you want me to send a copy of that around, we can send it around. Sets out what's to be done. Critical path there. There are 2 sets of project management meetings that take place for the actual construction, which is a weekly meeting that's attended by Glenn Hooper. And there's a monthly meeting where Glenn Hooper and myself attend with a sort of a higher level overview there. So we've had the first one of those. And that we have a cash flow and a cost plan of what should cost what. And so that's discussed at those, both the weekly and the monthly meetings, with any trustees, all minuses on the budget that will be picked up there. In terms of, for example, the attenuation tank and the hard surfaces, the hard surface that we've got, i.e. the areas of car parking, and all, that's what the Environment Agency required us to put the attenuation tank in. We had some debate, significant debate and full and frank discussions with the Environment Agency to make sure we were putting the smallest attenuation tank in we could put in, and that they weren't over-egging it. So that is looked at, and that we have endeavoured to make sure we are only moving what needs to go to Gresham Road, really needs to go, not what we might want to be there. The issue with the call centre is the housing repairs call centre reception team, and really over the last 10 years it's been proved that having that team in close proximity to the workforce and the supervisors of that workforce is the most efficient way to run that. Originally those housing repairs were taken in the central call centre team here, and it was found it was better to have them co-located at the hub with the housing repairs people. And just last thing on vehicles and operational vehicle parking, it's a tricky one. There's some vehicles that fairly obviously need to be parked in a depot. No one wants a refuse collection truck parked on their drive, or their neighbour parking a refuse collection truck on their drive. So there might be less issue with the white van in terms of its size and impact on the visual environment. But there are other issues with staff taking those vans home. And it is one way to reduce the amount of space you need to park them. But you then end up with greater mileage than you would do if they were parked at the depot, because staff are driving, they've got the home and return journeys. So you've got some issues with wear and tear on your vehicles. You've also got issues with fuel and how you deal with the payment for that fuel and the tax implications of the fuel and the tax implications of it being an in-kind transport. So there are a number of issues there on the van situation. But essentially, the vehicles that will be in Gresham Road will be the ones that need to be there, and they will be as tightly parked as we can get them safe, while still allowing them to safely manoeuvre around the site. So it's emphasise really that we've worked as, and after all, really that's lots of officers from lots of teams at lots of levels in the council have worked as hard as we can to ensure that we're going to be able to operate from this depot as efficiently as we can, as cost effective as we can, but as safe as we can. And we've tested things out. We got one of our HGV drivers to drive our biggest vehicle around there when we were finalising the design for the access road, to make sure that what we were building was big enough to operate safely, but we weren't being excessive in what we were building. So we've been as inclusive as we can in terms of that situation, Chair.
Councillor Maggrave.
Thank you, Chair. Can I begin by actually thanking Councillor Pomfret and Councillor Harvey and the officers for the hard work that they've put into this project. I actually respectfully disagree, and I understand where the opposition are trying to go with this, but I disagree that we should be embarrassed. I actually think it's a very exciting project for the whole of this borough, especially for those who live near St Mary's Road, because it's been really difficult for them over a number of years, and this has been a vision of this authority for a long time. And the quick decisions that were taken were important decisions. And it was really interesting to hear Councillor Condacor say that he would have pretty much taken the same decisions, or that he welcomed the decisions that were taken. His only concern appeared to be that he hadn't actually taken the decisions, and it wasn't his idea. But it's a very good idea, and I want to begin by welcoming that, and to ask what alternatives were considered, because I think, is this best value for money? My understanding is it is. But I'd like to know more around, what alternatives there would have been, because I think this was not only the best deal that was on the table, and we've got property that's now worth more than we paid for it, but equally this was the only opportunity there was, and this decision had to be taken. I don't think that we need, Chair, to increase our workload as a committee with every capital programme. I trust the Cabinet, and I think we all get Cabinet agendas, we all get plans of what's happening in this authority. If we want to call them in, we can. And it was interesting hearing Councillor Kandaka ask why this issue hadn't been to this committee previously. Well, why didn't Councillor Kandaka ask for it to be here previously? Why hasn't, or has he been speaking to officers, as every member of this council is entitled to do? So I think this is a really exciting project. I think it's going to make life better for people in St Mary's Road. It's going to make sure there's somewhere in between Nuneaton and Bedworth for the whole borough to benefit both in cost savings and the staff for many years to come. And I want to thank all those who have been involved as a committee and say that I look forward to coming to see the new site in operation. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Haynes.
I give you a little history lesson. Instead of salting money away, as the previous administration did, i.e. 3 million to Iceland Bank, which went down, then if only they had used that 3 million to improve facilities for the people of the borough, how much better off would we be? And we would have got it at a cheaper rate at that time. But that was 10 years ago. Now, I don't think we've really recovered that 3 million yet. Not the whole of it. We've had some back. But that's the difference between the present administration. They want to improve and make things better in the borough. All that the previous administration wanted to do was to save money and try and make more money. We pay our rates to live in a town that's providing us with facilities, and that's what this present administration are doing. They're improving the facilities not only for the people who live adjacent to St Mary's Depot, but also to us people in Bedworth, because the lorries haven't got so far to go.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the history lesson, I think if we want to look at history lessons, I think Ofsted would have failed you on that lesson, Councillor Haynes, because he seems to forget that the previous Labour administration also invested in the Icelandic banks, and both sign-offs on both deposits by both Labour and Conservative administrations were actually signed off as financially viable by the finance officers. So your lesson fails on that point. But I want to ask a few questions of the officers, because we're here to talk about the report, not about useless issues that happened in the past.
You've admitted it then.
Because your point was useless.
Can we go through the chair, please? Come on.
There are a number of questions I want to ask the officers, because it's important that we learn lessons from this issue. No one is denying the overall strategic aim of moving from St Mary's Depot. It's what we've done, what we can learn, and how we can make things better going forward. That is what a council should do, and what any private industry would do, is look at lessons they have from whatever project they've undertaken, because no project, I repeat, no project is 100% perfect in any industry. So it's important we look at what we can learn. So I hope Brent can answer some of these questions for me. at 3 point, I'm looking at the managing director's report. So page 14 and 15. The light touch exercise has been alluded to before, and you mentioned that. Can you give us more background as to what was included in that light touch exercise and what due diligence was undertaken by officers into the proposed site, that this was a viable site and what works needed doing to it?
Okay. Due diligence is an interesting phrase that's come across the Atlantic, isn't it? Can mean anything to anyone. But in terms of what was done, I said the first thing was, and really to pick up on a point that Councillor Margrave about the site. Officers have strongly held the view, and members I believe as well, that if we were going to move the depot anywhere, it needed to move to Bermuda. Essentially, we're a circular borough. So the logical place to have your operations is as close in the so it was about Bermuda. And we had made inquiries of, I think it is UPS, who own the triangular, large bit of land that's just by the Griff traffic as you go to there. And when these for sale signs first went up on that, it was about, can we buy a proportion of that land? And despite there being a massive for sale sign up there, they didn't want to sell it, which was always a bit hard. But so it was always about Bermuda. So to answer Councillor Margrave, it was always about we want to move to Bermuda. There was no point we could see about moving the depot to anywhere else other than the middle of the borough, because you might have been in a different location, but you'd have been as worse off as you are in St. Mary's. So that was the first thing. So it was in the right place. The second thing was, did we think it was big enough to be able to operate from? So we did some modelling of how many vehicles could we get on there. Was there enough space to accommodate office accommodation? Looking at what we've got at St Mary's in terms of office accommodation, stores, vehicle workshops, and the mess room, show facilities, etc. So it was looking at that and saying, okay, yes, the footprint is big enough now. How are we going to get the vehicles in and out, which I'll come back to in a moment. And then the other thing was about there were some existing breeze blocks, single skin breeze block offices that were there. The assumption that was made there was we looked at, well, okay, can we go on top of that? We think we can. Might we need to extend it a bit? Yes, we think we can. So we based some costs on doing a conversion there. As part of the in-depth assessment of how we were actually going to make the site work that took place after we purchased it, what came out to light there was really the way we needed to configure the offices, mess room, storage, plant room, etc. meant that really we just needed to demolish those existing offices. We were never going to be able to get them to work correctly for us. The drainage was sort of in the wrong place, and there wasn't the showrooms were as big. We couldn't make them as big as we needed to make them. We were also keen, actually, and whilst we've not done it, whilst they're not absolutely mirror image to each other, we were also keen to make sure we had more than one shared cubicle for our female employees down there. That's all we've got down to Mary. So there was stuff there that as it transpired, that we just couldn't convert what was there. So it was a knockdown and start again. Having said that, they were single skin breeze block. They were never going to be thermally efficient, really. And they were undoubtedly going to get very hot in the summer, very cold in winter. So that was part of the initial thing, was that we thought we could make that work. When we looked at it in detail, we couldn't make it work as well. The other thing that we looked at was how we were going to get the vehicles in and out. Now, the depot had previously been a distribution warehouse with a big building at the back. So the vehicles, the distribution vehicle, which was a fairly hefty bit of kit, used to drive down the side to the side gate that's currently there, into there, get loaded, turn around and come back out again. So again, our initial thoughts were there was enough space to do that with refuse collection vehicles and the large skip lorries there, on the basis that fairly big trucks had done that, our trucks would do that. When we worked up that in more detail, would turn in circles, and the need really to do as best we can to segregate our operational activities from the operational vehicles from personal vehicles, and keeping operational vehicles away from pedestrians, and combating the sort of blind spot was there when you drove in. That one entrance was not going to be enough to accommodate efficiently and safely two-way traffic. So that assumption there that we could do that, which I still think in hindsight was not an unrealistic assumption on the basis that large vehicles were going in the back there in any case. But that is why we designed and came up with and came to the view that we needed to create the extra road to have a one-way system, which makes it a lot safer, and you can segregate the pedestrians and the vehicles there. So that was part of the things that we looked at, and I've already alluded to the fact that you know, and this is a learning point for me, I have to say. I would have fully expected to have had to have gone through really vigorous flood assessments on a greenfield site. So when you're taking away soil, grass, fields that rain soaks into, and you put something hard there, you've got to make sure that the drains can go. On the basis that we had a hard surfaces, and admittedly the hard surface of the roof was 6 metres up in the air, but it's still a hard surface. If you drop it down, it's still a hard surface. It's something that the drainage system that was there would be appropriate for what we needed to use. Now that, as we go into detail, that's turned out not to be the case. That's the learning point for us. I'm taking on a brownfield, essentially a brownfield site. There's actually more to do there with current, and probably in the future will be even more significant obligations to work with there. Is that
answers some of your questions. Going on into the rest of the report, at 4.2, it gives a description of the work which became apparent, and you've mentioned some of those. Can you give timescales on when these became apparent and when they were reported back to the portfolio holders, if they were at all?
They were being worked up all through last year, right up until the last minute, really, because what we were trying to do was still construct the operational depot for the least cost that we could do. So were these genuinely things that needed to happen, rather than them wanting to happen or wanting to happen there? So they were being worked up all through that time, and that is one of the things that I suppose, in one sense, engaging with a lot of people is a good thing, because you should probably end up with the best outcome from that. But it's a timely process. There's a lot of back and forth and to and fro there to get the final specification that you're looking for.
You mentioned in one of your previous answers that you are now having project management meetings, and you have one more senior with yourself, and I can't remember. Glenn.
He's looking at
You said that you've just had your first one.
Yeah.
Why weren't those meetings taking place earlier?
Well, this is the project delivery meetings. So we're now building something. So it's about making sure it's on time, being built to the right standards, and the costs are okay. So that is a standard thing, that you have a pre-start meeting that we had in last week in November, I think it was, to determine exactly when we were going to start, what the length of the project would be, and now they're being run at that stage. So that's absolutely standard in terms of how you'd run the project of constructing. So we're into construction phase now. We're building something there.
But did you have meetings in the planning phase?
We had lots and lots and lots and lots of meetings.
So why weren't the costings brought back to Cabinet for updates? Look at expanding the budget instead of doing it all at the last minute?
Because it's about coming back with a proper firm cost rather than to and from. There's so many options were being looked at that things were in and out until you get to the final picture of what you want to construct.
So why did it take 18 months to get to the final picture?
Because that, to be honest, I think, and I would have to say this, Chair, that's pretty quick actually. Had we been, because one of the other things we could have done, had the borough been suitable to do this, is we could have bought a field, and we could have designed it exactly how, you know, you could have said, right, this is what we. It's a bit like if you buy a plot of land and you want to build a house, you think, oh, I've bought me a plot of land, I'll build a house, it's how we do it. We were about, to use a domestic analogy, about buying a house in the road we really wanted to be in. And then once we bought that, because we know it's the right road to be in, the right place to be in, is how do we then make that work for us as a large family with lots of cars. So had we gone down that route of buying a piece of land, it would not be unusual for something like this to have taken 2-3 years to design and cost out. But because we had the opportunity to buy the property in the right, to use domestic analogy, and the right property in the right road, about getting in there and getting that, and then as quickly as we can, doing what needs to be done to help to allow us to use that.
And you mentioned that we're on course for June completion.
Yeah.
Does that mean that there will be a delay? Because it mentions in the report that we're hoping to hand over St Mary's around about the 1st of April. Is there going to be a slight delay in the handover of St Mary's to the new?
Okay, so I don't think it'll be handed over on the 1st of April. I don't think the new purchaser will be ready to take it off our hands on the 1st of April. In the sense that they're still working up their design on the site and doing site investigations and whatever. So I think there will be a delay now. But in terms of Les Stone in particular, is the person who's liaising with the purchaser of the site. It's a land sale. To make the point that should we need to leave some stuff there or have some stuff there later than the 1st of April, is that okay? And the indications are, well, yes, it's quite a big site, and they certainly have to work on the whole of the site from day one. And if it was the 1st of April, they wouldn't have a fleet of JCBs driving past the road on the 1st of April. We've been talking about having some ability to leave some stuff there if we need to.
There's some breathing room.
Some breathing room, and looking at other contingencies that we've got to do that if push really comes to shove. So we have close working relationships with Coventry. So we've been talking to them about being able to potentially store some of our refuse collection vehicles there if we needed to, because the Whitley Depot site is very close to a incinerator for those when we drive past it. So there's potential to park some vehicles there if we need to store some stuff there. And we've also been talking to Travis Perkins, who have their offices in Fleet End Road, and they've got some yard space that they don't use for anything, concrete yard space. So again, we've been talking to them to say if we need to store some stuff there, can we do that? And they're willing to let us do that with free of charge. Yeah. So there is potential for some slippage on the move out to St Mary. We're ahead of the game in looking at that. But I said there'll also be an opportunity to, I know, to be moving stuff into Gresham Road earlier than June. Because there'll be external works taking place more towards the back end, and then it'll be a lot with the internal fit out of the offices. So once the external external bit of the offices will be done by the end of the first week of February. So once that's done, you've basically got a box in there, and then the works will be taking place inside the box to put electricity, IT stuff, heating, ventilation, plastering, it's all inside that box. So there's the ability for us to start to move stuff that we need to store in the bigger area of the warehouse to where we store it. That's put away, tucked up against the wall, but that's okay, that's fine for the sale place, and that's not going to inhibit the construction activity on site.
Going forward then, Chair, I think we need to make sure that we do learn the lessons. I think I saw you nodding that you said that no project never has any lessons. I think it would be really useful, Chair, that when the project is complete, and perhaps it's been in place for 6 months or a year, that a report is brought back to committee with a lessons learned document for us to consider what, if anything, we need to review. Are our policies robust enough? Is there anything which could be done differently? Because it is a challenge both for a portfolio holder and for officers to get this right, because it is a multi-million-pound operation. But perhaps there are things we need to look at about the communication lines to portfolio holders and officers. Are there timescales which need to be put in earlier? When should the flags start being raised, etc.? So I would move a recommendation, Chair, that we do have a report come back perhaps a year after the depot has been finished for a lessons learned report. And I would second Councillor Connicor's suggestion that the Cabinet should consider having on their dashboard report, which we get quarterly, if there are major capital projects which are ongoing, just a red, amber, green status like they do with everything else to indicate whether it's on course or not, because they look at those, but this is also like the sick absence or whatever. But I think it would be a useful indicator and an early indicator to Cabinet to flag up that perhaps these issues need more in-depth investigation and action a bit sooner.
Councillor Bowman.
Chairman,
I hadn't forgot you, I've got a now.
God, I'd forgotten myself. Chairman, it just strikes me sitting here that we've been forming a working group and we've been discussing in depth a project and trying to unpick what went wrong and so on, even at the point where it's not even through to fruition, where we can't judge the conclusions. I would support what Councillor Wilson is saying, that we do need a review at some distance from completion, particularly with regard to the operating costs of the new depot compared with the old depot, because I have a feeling that these savings that are indicated here are underplayed, if anything, and it does seem that the sort of flash idea that you can suddenly put £625,000 down and you've got it right does seem a bit difficult, really. You know, I do wonder if someone with more experience, and this is a new experience for the borough, wouldn't have just thrown £1 million on top and got it right. You know, it's easy to do that, isn't it? Especially if you know that you do have sufficient reserves to meet quite high contingencies on a job like this. So I support what Councillor Wilson has said, that we do need to have a look at it at a distance. As far as other capital projects are concerned, I think that's a judgment that needs to be done against what's ongoing or what we are trying to achieve in the council. It always surprised me with this project. It came as a surprise that we had it as a project on the books, and I've only been on the council for 4.5 years, and none of the plans were that apparent. You almost had to say, wow, that's a good idea, that's in the place we wanted, we've had our eye on the market for a while, and there's something that looks really good, and then somebody knocks £250,000 off the price. You think, what, we've got to get in there. I can imagine all that happening, Chairman, but I do think it does need a long sight rather than short sight for a decent appraisal of what went on.
Councillor Connicor.
Yeah, I want to just come back on a couple of things. In terms of estimating costs, we've got a Stockingford railway station potentially coming up. And when that was estimated, they took all the costs they know about and they add 40% because it's a very early stage project. And when you did your £600,000, that was a very early stage project. So I think we do actually need to start to say this is a very early stage project when we get the initial paperwork, and the 40% or whatever figure we from these sort of projects for local government are appropriate. But yeah, it is useful to add the 40% because then Craig and Simone and people in finance can say it's £1 million plus or minus 400,000. We've built in that there is some uncertainty early. So I think that's, yeah, we do need to add contingency, because we've got no contingency in the first thing. Second thing, the thing that's dropped off we haven't mentioned is the market's not moving to the depot. That's moving to the back of the Hereford Road car park, so it'd be useful just to check that that is on track as well. I didn't want to talk about the £3 million lost in Iceland, but I was at the Cabinet in 2008 in March when the Labour administration agreed to invest the £3 million. And it, can I just carry on? But it was then the council fell into Conservative hands, and one investment was made in April under Labour, and two investments were made under the Tories. So I don't really think we should be arguing over what happened then, but it was a joint effort. So I'll blame you both. Yeah, and just clarification a bit on when you say you've got a Gantt chart. Does that include the moving of things as well as the physical building?
Okay. In reverse order, no, the Gantt chart doesn't include the moving of things. This is about building the depot. The principal questions that were asked was it going to be done by the end of June and was it on track? So that's about the build. That's what the Gantt chart is for. And we'll be working up the detail of how we're going to, when and how we're going to move things in. Just in terms of and in one sense, from an officer perspective, it would be quite comfortable and nice to say, okay, we think this is going to cost £1 million or £1.5 million, but we're not sure about that, so I'm going to say it's going to cost £2.5 million. And then the price comes in at £1.75 million, and everybody thinks you've saved £750,000. So you said, you sort of think it's that, you say that, it comes at that, you've sort of saved £750,000. That's a good thing from a perspective, yeah? And you save because you don't overspend. The downside, there's two downsides of that, is that if in setting that budget, that's what you need, you have to borrow, which you probably would do. You borrow too much, and that's a cost you've got for a long time. So you don't ever want to borrow more than you need to. And I know I'm stating the obvious here, but you don't ever need to borrow more. But even if you didn't need to borrow, there's a real opportunity cost on that. So just for my example there, if it's £750,000 you don't need, and that sits there in the budget for the duration of the project, and it can be any project that might last 2 or 3 years, that's £750,000 you can't use to do something else that might be really important. Which is a long-winded way of saying it's a fine line between getting an accurate cost with a realistic contingency and making sure that you're not committing resources to something that you don't really need, because you can use those to do other things as well. So it is a balance between the two, and undoubtedly the more projects you do of a similar nature, and then the better you'd get at really knowing what that right balance was. But so to flag up there that there is some opportunity cost. So it's never a straightforward thing as to how much you don't ever really want to build too much contingency in, really, because it's not an effective use of resources if you do that.
I just wanted the line contingency on the document that went to Cabinet,
yes, yeah,
and then we could discuss about it so we don't forget we need a contingency because there's things we don't know.
Yeah, but that's
I think Councillor Maggrave is the last speaker. That's all right, and we'll get to the vote.
So, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of responses. First of all, into responding to Councillor Wilson earlier, he raised the private sector and how the private sector would have dealt with this. And I'd give Councillor 2 words from private sector experience: strategic drift. In the private sector, they would have jumped at this opportunity, because if they didn't jump at this opportunity, it would have been missed. And I think, officers have done a fantastic job. In relation to Councillor Kandaka's proposal that we had a 40%, I think 40% contingent.
No, I said that there was contingency of 40%, but we need to work out
very high, Chair. I'm not so sure about that. What I would like to do, though, Chair, is alongside the proposals that have already been made, I would like to, whether it's an amendment or a friendly amendment, as we used to call them, I would like us to note thanks to the staff who have put hard work into this project and to welcome the project as something very exciting for our borough going forward. Because I think across the table we all agreed that the right decisions were made. We may disagree about the timescales of decisions, we may disagree about some elements of the project, but I think we all agree that this is very exciting for our borough and it's going to offer a magnificent facility for Nuneaton and Bedworth. And I would like to see that in our recommendation or conclusion of this meeting, Chair.
Grant, do you got anything to say that? I, of course, would echo that, because I think this was a brilliant opportunity that the officers took initially in order to get somewhere right in the middle of the borough. And this is a win-win for us, as far as I'm concerned, for a long, long, long time in the future. There's so I would do the same as other councillors have done around and said today, and thank everybody for all the hard work and all the stuff that they've put into this, including getting a site that will suit us all for everything that we need for, let's hope, 50 years. Even Councillor Harvey, I don't think will be there in 50 years.
I would certainly will not.
The longest serving, continued serving councillor in the borough. I'm just saying it's this is a golden opportunity. I think the officer did right. It wasn't so much as a light touch, it was a light touch to say, hold on a minute, we've got something here, and a golden touch, or whatever you want to call it, but it was something that I believe that £71,000 a year savings, plus the stuff that's going to go on at St Mary's Road. I even remember St Mary's Road when there was an open swimming pool there, you know, and that was cold and a bit smelly at times. So even I go back that far to remember some cool things about St Mary's Road. So what's the panel's recommendations? There's a couple, Shirley.
The one that Councillor Wilson seconded of Councillor Condarkas was with regard to the maybe a line on the capital report that goes to Cabinet a line on the capital projects when it goes quarterly for the performance to Cabinet.
Could we just take them one at a time then? And
Right, okay.
does the panel find in favour of that, or do you think otherwise? We don't need it. So, all in favour of that recommendation?
Can I move that my vote is recorded on that item?
And mine.
And mine.
Oh. I'm sure everything. Those against? Okay. Is that recorded accordingly, or do we have to go through the process of mentioning councillors by name?
No, just...
Okay. Because I'm just thinking, because we've got two videotapes.
Nobody else seconded them.
So
Okay.
that's lost.
The other one was that a report be brought back to this committee 12 months after the depot being functional,
Yeah.
on the lessons learned and processes that were undertaken.
I'd be happy to second that.
Okay. Does that find favour of the panel?
Yeah.
Everybody all right with that?
Agreed.
Do we need a recorded vote again? Okay then.
And thirdly, Chair, that the panel would like to thank the staff involved in the project
Yeah.
and for the exciting project going forward.
I think that's shared by everybody in the panel, and I think I'm good. Welcome in the report. Thanks to one and all. Right. Now we go back to item number 6. Brent,
Yep.
you're dealing with this as well?
I am doing this as well. Okay, Chair. So, if you recall, this came to the panel before Christmas, and the plenary expressed a strong desire to see information presented in graphical format and a bit wider scope of information as well. So that's what I've done in the appendices. So, just to take you through the various appendices that are there. Which basically looks at sort of ticket sales in terms of car parking, ticket sales, and some information on income. We've got some information on the market stalls for the period of time that was originally in the request for the item to be considered by the panel, and then a couple of sort of written appendices about some of the decisions behind people choosing to visit town centres or not, and what effect car parking prices have on that, and some indication on what happened sort of over the Christmas period or up to Christmas for the retail sector. So the first graph is Appendix 1. That shows the weekly borough ticket sales, and that's specifically for the 13 weeks that was originally requested as part of the works the work program. So I did put little markers on the lines, so because we don't repeat producing colour. So hopefully they're fairly clear as to what line represents which one, and basically I guess the most the reason one is the 2006 one is the one with the circles on it, so the lightest line, and that shows the one with the circle.
2016, not 06.
2016, sorry, thank you, yes. Then Appendix 2, which is the second half, that's on a monthly basis then, over a financial year perspective, going from 2011-12 up to the current position for 16-17, i.e. up until the end of December. That's the last 4 months we've got. And again, the 16-17 position is the line with the circles on there. So that's the so that one's for Nuneaton, appendix 2. We then got one for Bedworth, exactly the same as the financial year, it's the same financial year, and again the 16-17 one is the one with the circle on, and then we've got the borough total, which amalgamates those two in appendix 4. So that's ticket sales. Then appendix 5, which actually hasn't reproduced as well as I thought it might do, because those two colours are extremely different if you see them in colour. I'll do the hatch them when you dotty next one. That's the total numbers of 1 hour parking tickets sold between 2015 and 16, taken from May to December. The reason why it's gone from May is that the changeover in pricing and tariff boards, etc., happened in April. So April this year. The fundamental reason I put that there, Chair, is that in every month we've sold less 1 hour tickets in 2016 than we did in 2015, and the price hasn't changed. So that was just the point of that on there. Then Appendix 6 is income. So before we looked at ticket sales, Appendix 6 is income, and again. Going over full financial year 13-14 to up to the current position in 16-17. That's slightly different. I don't know why I did that slightly different, other than I did it on a different day. But the 2016-17 is a rhombus. I think that's the right phrase for it, or a bit of a sort of diamond shape. Right? At the bottom there, again, it's the lightest line that you can see there. So that's sort of the car parking aspects. Appendix 7 shows the number of market stalls in Bedworth, and we've got there the darkest line there, and the circles is what's been happening in 2016 compared to the years, and then we've got the same thing for the Nuneaton market stalls. Again, the darkest line with the circles on is 2016 in terms of number of market stalls. Then Appendix 9 just makes some points that from a couple of pieces of research, and this is something that Ian Powell really making the point that undoubtedly car parking charges have some influence as to where people decide to go and how long they'll go for and what have you, but they're not the only, it's not the only influencing factors there, that there are more things in play with people's decision to go to town centres or cities than just the cost of parking. And then the last one was from last Friday, actually. Yes, it was last Friday. Which is an article on the BBC website, which just flagged up the resale sales fell sharply in December. Interestingly, in November and particularly Black Friday, which turned into sort of Black Week really, but people were running upward events. But November retail sales were up and then dropped fairly dramatically in December across the country as a whole and across various sectors. But I felt that one of the really interesting points is the fourth sentence from the end of that, where it says shoppers also bought more online, spending about £1 billion a week, which is 21.3% higher than December 2015, which I think just really does emphasise the change in people's shopping habits from physically going somewhere to shop rather than, and now it's about doing it online and either having it delivered to home or picking it up with a Collect Plus or something like that. It's convenient for you to go and pick it up. You see that reflects more anyway is the newsagent shop is just around the corner. So that's the information I share, which is hopefully more understandable and helpful to the panel on what the position has been on those things over the last few years and 2016-17 to date.
Any councillor? Councillor Condicon?
I might as well start. I love graphs. It's really hard to look at tables, and those tables we had a month ago were really hard. These graphs actually paint quite a good picture, particularly if you look at them online in colour. And what happens to the... I actually quite like the further back graphs where you've done the current year in a lot darker.
Yeah,
that works.
Yeah,
your technique was getting better as you went to the later graphs.
Perfect, Councillor.
He's on a learning curve. I'm trying to get there in the end.
Yeah, we're up and down.
But one of the really serious things has been what the impact has been on the Neaton for the over 1 hour stays. Because as you said and everyone said, the 1 hour stay has stayed at £1. And for a lot of people nipping into Bedworth, that don't want to upset people,
free
but
parking in
the length of stays in the Nuneaton will inherently be longer than the length of stays in Bedworth. And we can see from the Nuneaton graph, when it came in, April was pretty similar to any other month. May, we lost about 10,000 visitors a month visiting the Nuneaton car parks. And then in June time, we started with the losses of the big shops, the Co-op and the British Home Stores and things. So it's a complicated picture. It's not saying that car parking issues are all down to the charges. You know, there are several factors, but there has clearly been an elasticity of demand, or elasticity. I don't know which way around elasticity. There's been an impact of actually you charge more and people will go somewhere else in small numbers. And we might be able to quantify the effect of 5% or 10%, but it's clear that over the total impact of the town, we're 20% down potentially in Nuneaton by December time. It's really interesting to see far less change in Bedworth because you have got a lot of free parking, people will be doing shorter stays, etc. And actually the income ones are really interesting because we put the charges up by roughly 20% for stays over an hour, and we've received just about the same level of income as we have in previous years. And that is the sort of thing you expect when there's a certain amount of money you can raise in car parking, which is about £2 million for this council. And the more you try to raise by increasing fees, you get more money but from fewer people. And then that has a real detrimental impact on the small traders. And if you look at the Nuneaton market stalls, that's an appalling drop of traders across the whole year. And the traders have to park for the whole day. They are a particular group who might only be making £4 profit after paying themselves a minimum wage, and to lose another £1 or £2 in parking, it really is a big hit on the market traders. And we should be doing a deal or something to try and get the market traders. Yeah, they're valuable to our town, and the market is getting smaller every Saturday. We should be doing something to try and help them survive, because they work on very small margins. Their customers face the parking charge increase, and they themselves face the parking charge increase. And one of the other things is, if this decline in parking numbers is structural, if we're permanently going to see 10 or 20% less people parking in Eton, we should actually be probably having a review of our car parks and having a working group to look at car parking charges, and if, like some of the back of the Co-op Club car parks, if we should be releasing them for building or whatever, because we have 10,000 people less per month parking. Yeah, there's valuable land there. I mean, the land at Orchard Street car park, that could be some flats and some housing. So if we are never going to get back to these numbers of car parking, actually trying to build some affordable housing on that land. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Watkins.
Thanks, Chair. As you can see from my uniform, I work for Hermes, so I can assure you that online clicking, as you like it, and parcel delivery is on the increase, not the decrease, so that's probably where some of the car parking goes. But there's other ways of looking at it, Chair. You could look at it that people are cycling in, walking in, coming in on a coach, coming in on a bus, or even coming in on the train. So there's hundreds of ways of looking at the decrease in parking. Market traders, I don't actually know if they do pay, because they already pay for the market and the market stalls. I don't actually know if they do pay. They do pay as well, so we get double sticking them, and that's great. And they have to park in a special car park so that they can get their vans in, which ain't tarmacked, and it's in the back. It used to be the town hall car park in there at one stage. So I wonder if you actually read when you cut yourself, because you're learning all these lessons today, so you must be human. So that's a good thing for you to be looking at. I just don't understand where we're going with this, because if Abbey Street and Vicarage Street do go ahead and we do develop on them, then we'll be losing the car parks anyway. I think it would be sad for a council just to rely on car parking charges. So I'm just confused on why we keep banging on about car parking charges all the time. It's just wrong.
Councillor Magro.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to address an issue that's often been raised by the opposition, in fact, at full council, in relation to car parking. There's often this myth that if we have free car parks across our borough, entirely free at all times, that the high street would be full, that there would be an increased footfall. But actually, if you look at the Mary Porter's report, it's my own personal copy, Councillor. I know you've not got any papers, but this is my copy. But the Porter's report says clearly that free parking does not result in higher town centre usage. And that's actually backed up in the research highlighted in the officer's report. So that's really important in acknowledging that the relationship between footfall within the town centre and parking is a relationship that's incidental. It's not causation. And that is critical when we're having this debate. There are lots of issues on the high street. I often speak about wanting to improve our high street. I've got some real issues around the closure of the co-op that I've raised in the past. I've got real issues about the number of shops we can get in, independent traders. The fact that some opposition members previously were arguing for an out-of-town shopping mall near St Nicholas Park, I think. You know, these kind of issues are really important, and I've argued that we need to support business, we need to get people starting businesses. But where that starts is with business rates. Business rates are far too high, and that's one area that's impacting on the whole economic ecosystem that exists within the high street. But importantly, what parking does, and the Porter's report highlights this by saying that free parking all day is not the solution. That's something the Porter's report that was chaired, I understand, by the MP for Nuneaton, Marcus Jones. He chaired that committee. So that report highlights that we shouldn't be going down the free parking route. What we need to do is offer good quality parking and experience in the town centre, and I think we do that really well. One of the problems we've got, though, councillors, is that CCTV, which is really important for people who park in the borough, is not funded by the police commissioner. So if you want to have free parking, are you suggesting, are any of the councillors here who want to have entirely free car parking, because we do have an element of free car parking to encourage the nighttime economy, but are any councillors, I'd be interested in hearing, are you suggesting that we should scrap the CCTV, or would you support me in asking the Conservative Police Commissioner to put his hand in the pocket and pay for CCTV in this end of the borough? This end of the county. Thank you, Chair.
There's Brendan, I'm thinking these are more statements rather than questions to your good self.
I would absolutely agree with your assessment there.
Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I would challenge Councillor Margrave to find any Conservative budget proposal which had completely free car parking, day in, day out, whenever, wherever. He can't, because he knows what he's just said is a lie. Full stop. End of discussion. There has never been that. The Conservative budgets have looked at and consider, and our viewpoint is that you have to set the right level of car parking, because there is an elasticity of demand. Eventually, you will find that residents and car parkers and shoppers will get resistant to always increasing car parking charges. All they ever seem to see is car parking charges go up. They never ever see them seem to come down permanently. Yes, the services have to wipe their face, but at the end of the day, we are making a profit out of the residents. They aren't just covering the essential costs of the services, they are making a profit, and they are using that £2 million in the budget to subsidise other areas of the budget. And it has happened time and time and time again, not just in the financial crash that happened in 2008, but before that, when car parking charges were even lower. And it seems to be that the shoppers are an easy target to look at when it comes to finding a source of income to fit in to meet deficits in the budget. And we have found this year that isn't the case. The shoppers have revolted, and they have led to 70,000 less car parking tickets being sold, and also a £200,000 deficit on the anticipated budget in the car parking shopping. That's the figures which have been reported to Cabinet. That's not me making it up, that's what the officers are reporting. The graphs are very interesting indeed. If you look at Appendix 4, for example, where it shows the total number of borough ticket sales, if you look at the high point of 2011 compared to this year of 16-17, that's almost 40,000 tickets less in 1 month. Now I accept there is a national trend that December didn't quite meet up to expectations, but 40,000 tickets is a hell of a lot, even to... I'm not expecting us to buck the trend, but that is still a significant decrease on where we were at our high point. It seems to be, and the trends, looking at the graphs, and the graphs are easier to follow than the spreadsheets we were presented with, because it collates it all for us. The overall trend seems to be that when we last increased the car parking charges, there was some resistance. Then people started to gain confidence again and the numbers increased. But now the numbers have gone even lower than at the previous levels when we increased them before. And that is what should be worrying us as a council. Because if they are going that low, it does lead to the question of sustainability and viability of the town centre economy. And if we look at the overall car parking metered income at Appendix 6, again, the drop-off is dramatic compared from even 2015-16 in December. to this year's figures. Those are very concerning indeed, and I think Cabinet should be looking long and hard at the car parking metering strategy. I would recommend and move as a recommendation that we look at taking up the offer from the manager of Road Walk to look at the parking structure, pricing structure in the town centre, because as he himself said at Cabinet and then reiterated in the full chamber, that there are ways of restructuring our pricing strategy which would see us get almost as much income but actually increase footfall in the town centres. That is effectively free consultancy he has offered this council to try and help us. Why aren't we taking that help? Now, Mary Portas was quite right. Free car parking isn't the answer, but you have to look at your car parking strategy, your market strategy, your development strategy in the town centres to give an overall package for people to want to come into the town centres. It's the overall package. These are streams. These are threads in a tapestry which we need to look at. And when you start to unpick one, it starts to unravel. And we've been picking away at the car parking stream, and now it's all unravelling. That is the reality of what is happening, Councillor Margrave, and you can't deny it on these figures. I would make that recommendation to Cabinet, Chair.
Can I find a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Condacor?
Well, Ben, do you want to go ahead?
No, I'll write people down and just get them gone to them.
Okay, couple points coming back. One of the things that came out of the comments from the market traders, and particularly the Road Walk, is it's converting people from a 1 hour stay to a 2 hour stay. That is actually what you want for business. I do not want free parking. I've never asked for free parking. What the Green Budget did many years ago was ask for free evening parking. What we actually want to do is stop people driving to Hinckley and get them to drive to Nuneaton instead. And one of the key factors is if you pay for £1 to park for an hour, after 45 minutes, if you look at your watch, you go back to your car. There's this time anxiety. And everyone in the retail business for Central Nuneaton says it's a 2 hour rate that's important. Not that you're getting more people driving to town, but actually they're not then going around for 45 minutes and then rushing off. You actually want to get them to stay for the 1 hour 45. And so actually, in our parking structure of charges, it's actually the £1.80 we charge for 2 hours, which is actually quite an important charge. And that is the same as what Coventry car parks, some of the West Orchard car parks charge. So it's looking at that charge. And it'd be great if Brent could do us a graph like the one on Appendix 5 for the 2 hour rate, because I think getting people to stay for 2 hours means they'll have a cup of coffee, they'll do more stuff, they'll look at more market. So I think the 2 hour charge is where we should be investing in, not just to get any increase in numbers of people coming, but actually getting the 40,000, 35,000 that are coming to actually stay a bit longer. That doesn't cause more environmental damage from driving in and parking the car for longer. It actually causes more trade in the town. And that's a sort of area where I think what Chris was talking about, talking to the Road Walk, it's using the intelligence of the retailers to keep us our £2 million income, but actually make those journeys into town serve our town better. And also the geographical spread, because it costs exactly the same to park at Paul Bank Street, which is deserted in the daytime, as it does in the Road Walk. And people have different price points, and we should be thinking about, should we differentiate parking so that we can actually get the people on a tighter budget who don't mind walking across the ring road, somewhere £2 for an hour, 2 hours for £1 somewhere like Paul Bank Street or Orchard Street, because at the moment we're not doing that.
Councillor Haynes?
Just to answer Councillor, of course we don't charge after 6 o'clock for car parking, so the income's sure to be down. In Bedworth they've actually decommissioned some of the car parks, they don't pay at all. So, and the other thing of course is Airfield Road, business people can park there all day for £1.
Okay, any other question? Councillor Graham?
Yes, I think that it's been overplayed, the impact of online shopping. That's always going to be something that's got to be contended with, but we've had easy access to online shopping for well over a decade. It's nothing new. What does seem to stick out, if you look at Appendix 4, is there's definitely one outlier, and that's been the most recent year. There's no doubt that ticket sales have gone down. And I just don't think it's a coincidence that the ticket prices have gone up. As Councillor Wilson has said, it's very highly publicised. Everyone knows it. And of course it's going to put people off, and people do feel rushed and uneaten, as Councillor Kandaka said before. And no wonder they're shopping online, because they feel a bit put off by all of this. And if we've got less market stalls, if we've got if we've got some shops closing down, and that's all going to make a big difference. So I think in some respects the Borough Council needs to get a little bit out of the way and at least consider reducing some parking charges and trying to get a few more people to park in the Neaton particularly.
I shall take two more speakers and then we'll close it. Councillor Margaret.
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly, really, is that if we compare our parking charges to other areas, we actually fare very well. We offer good value for money. And I just wanted to also pick up on the point that Councillor Wilson made. I mean, I've been called many things, and some of them are true, but being a liar isn't one of them. I think it's really important that we acknowledge, and I'm really glad today that you've acknowledged that, you know, all parking shouldn't be free. The council is not profiting off parking. That money goes into things that benefit the town centre, such as the experience, which is what gets people in. So I think you're wrong in what you've said. But importantly, I just want to go back to this issue of funding CCTV and to ask your view about who should fund the CCTV. Should it be this authority that's had a 53% cut, or should it be the police commissioner who has lots of money in their coffers and often benefiting the south of the county? What's your view, Councillor?
I'm not going to answer the debate. We're talking about this particular thing, car parking fees, and what to deal with that way. Mrs. Palmer.
I think these figures are grossly sort of misrepresented, because I mean it took me 45 minutes to get through town the other Saturday. I was there were only 3 vehicles at a time being allowed through the pedestrian crossings by Asda. You've got a situation where we've got one of our car parks there directly opposite. There's the ability to park for 2 hours for free. And I think that is where the figures are lacking as well. I think people are just parking for 2 hours free and utilising the free car parking that is there. So the footfall into town, I think, is probably a lot higher, but we're not actually seeing the true figures from this because we have no ability to be able to account for the numbers.
Yeah, well, the thing is, one, I can't agree with the recommendation that's put forward, because when you look at this report and the conclusions and the facts are, the perceived wisdom that they feel £1 for 2 hours of drive, shoppers out in the Neaton Town Centre is perceptive rather than wisdom, and is not supported by available research. The facts in this report turned around and said that the scaremongering that's been going on between the Conservatives and the Greens is a load of nonsense. And these are the facts. These are not Trump facts. These are facts. Or tell, well, what did the comment say? But these are other facts. You know, they're alternative facts. The facts are in front of us, councillors, and it actually turns around and tells us that what's been said is a load of nonsense. That's nothing. Right, the recommendation, we had the recommendation from Councillor Wilson, which stated
that we recommend to Cabinet that they take up the offer of the Managing Director of Brentwood to investigate the car park pricing structure in the Neaton and Bedworth to benefit the overall council's income stream.
that found a second. Is all those in favour?
Can we have our votes recorded?
Yes.
By all means. That's right. Those against?
I'll have my vote recorded too, Chair.
Yeah, I think it's recorded anyway. So the ultimate recommendation is the members of panels to consider the information presented and the various appendices of the report, and the panel will make comments and cabinet members for planning and development of and the cabinet. So are we willing to note the report? Thank you. Right, item number 8. Have you taken that?
Yes. Thank you very much, Chair. In terms of the report that's been presented, what I'd like to do, because I think previous panel members, in terms of going through it, have a good understanding of the background of the various organisations, is you've got a good overview of performance for the organisations we're talking about, that is Warwickshire Carver, Warwickshire Employment Rights Service and the CAB. I'd like to just pick up on a number of developments that are really, really important.
There's, can I just stop you for a quick second? We normally hope to get representatives here from the various bodies in order to speak to the report. My understanding is that there's a conflict between tonight's meeting and a meetings elsewhere.
Yes. Otherwise, yes, we will have them. And Alison was here at the last meeting. And I'll ensure that they just basically weren't able to make today's meeting, and we'll be here at the next meeting.
What I was going to suggest, if the panel wishes to actually agree to it without going through the report currently, if we were to bring this up at the next meeting and ask the representatives to attend so they could actually speak to the report. I'm not trying to delay anything. The only thing I'm trying to do is to get some sort of consensus, and if we get people on here to actually speak to what they're actually doing in their particular organisation, that might be a good thing for us as Scrutiny. Councillor Conjure.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to take the body of the report when they're here to ask questions. I think maybe one thing you could just tell us about was the Carver move as well, maybe tonight before we get back.
Yeah.
Well, if we turn around, we say about the Carver move, and then if the panel wishes to do, we'll present this at the next overview Scrutiny meeting, and hopefully we can get representatives there. So if you can give us some information on the Carver move,
no problem.
and then we'll take it on from there.
Yeah. Okay. So with respect to that, as of January, Warwickshire Carver has moved out of 72 High Street, Nuneaton, and into the Newtown Centre. That's kind of been something that's taken, I'd say, maybe about a year from initial discussions through to fruition. There are a number of benefits for us as a council, but there are probably, I'd say, more benefits for the community and voluntary sector and for Carver in terms of how they will be able to do their work. In terms of 72 High Street was a residential property, not really fit for purpose, but the CVS had been in there for 30 or so years. And as they had developed, and as the organisation developed, and other organisations that they were housing there, it became quite difficult. It wasn't really compliant from an equalities perspective, etc., etc. So when the opportunity was kind of put forward in terms of Newtown Centre being an option, it was something that Carver were very, very interested in. The board collectively were very, very interested in, and together with the assistance of Brent and Les, that has kind of moved forward, and it's been really, really good in that the money that we provide, the money that we report here in terms of that core funding that comes from ourselves and from the county council, that enables them to operate. And what has happened is they have then been able to leverage additional money in, and they've already invested and made some significant changes to the Newtown Centre. So they, as of January, are kind of completely based there. All the groups that have been running out of there will remain in situ. There's no issue with that. What we're actually looking at doing is ensuring that more groups are able to operate out of the Newtown Centre, which will help their overall sustainability, but there'll be much more flexibility, because that's something that we weren't really able to provide in terms of the hours and the kind of coverage, and also for them to be able to lever in additional funding. So groups there have been kind of consulted, engaged, all the way through, like, for example, Shade Dance Academy is an organisation that's been there for a long, long time. So groups, as soon as they heard that actually the council's kind of stepping away and someone else is coming in, understandably, were a bit concerned. But Alison and other members of Carver have worked with them. So that's something that is kind of very, very new, and that started as of January. And together with that, I think just one other point that I'd like to mention, and then we can expand upon maybe at the next meeting, is before you would see kind of reports from 4 organisations. So there would be a bit on Carver, a bit on the Employment Rights Service, a bit on CAB, and a bit from the Volunteer Centre on the volunteer development contract that we commissioned. As of kind of Q2, so as of August, because of a change of funding, the Volunteer Centre no longer provide the volunteer development services across Nuneaton and Bedworth. That now is being provided by Carver, who won that tender. That came about for a principal reason that the County Council commissioned for one organisation to provide volunteer development across the county. And what you had was you had a myriad of volunteer centres that were providing that in different ways. And rightly or wrongly, Carver has won that contract. And Alison, when she's here next, can maybe talk about that. But there are significant benefits of that. The one downside is obviously the volunteer centre has not been able to provide that service. However, we've been working, and I've been working with them for quite a long time. In another way, it's opened up some significant opportunities because it's giving them the ability to focus on other projects that are really, really good. But again, we can maybe expand upon that when the representatives from the organisations are here.
And we shall, the panel's quite happy with that. We can get more in-depth report next time, and sounds as though there's some good positive things going on.
There's a number of other things, but I think we can pick that up when they're
time.
there. And it's been quite heavy so far.
Everybody all right with that then? We'll
Agreed.
pick that up at the next meeting. Okay?
Just one thing, Chair. I think it would be worthwhile Carver advertising it a little bit better that they have moved. There's nothing outside that says Carver is there, or it wasn't a point past last time.
Okay.
And there was never anything to say what was inside Carver anyway. So, and I've always said that we don't know what goes on in there, so get some better signage outside. Shade Dance Studio is still there, but there's nothing to say Carver is there. I ain't going in for a dance.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Right, item number 9, Warwickshire Fire Services. I think reports in front of you, I think it's just for information rather than anything else. Councillor Magnet.
Thank you, Chair. This document, it'd be nice to have a representative here this evening, really.
No.
And I don't know whether anybody's been asked, but I would like them to come to a future meeting, Chair. The document is opaque in that it doesn't tell us a great deal. And it really leads to more questions. And the question I've got is, what does this mean for Nuneaton and Bedworth? In particular, does this mean closures? Does this mean a reduction in service? What does it mean? It uses that loved term, efficiency. Now, collaborations are good because I want all blue light services to collaborate. So that is a positive element to the report. But what concerns me is what's not being said. However, there is a tone within the report that there has to be a reduction somewhere. A reduction, whether that be in cost or services. And I really want to know what that means for the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth. And I'm sure that our residents, along with me, will be very concerned by this report and the potential for what it could mean for Nuneaton and Bedworth. So I would like to see a future meeting with a representative coming along either to the OSP or to full council to give a presentation on some more detail of their proposition. Now, if they're asking for us to suggest things that we need or would like to see cut, I don't have a list to hand because I don't want anything cut. I think we've had enough cut over the last 6 years, and there is enough money in the council tax pot overall to make sure that we get good quality emergency services. So I would ask that we have somebody come, Chair.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Gondicott.
Yeah, I was going to say that me and obviously Councillor Beaumont and a few others in the Council are Twin Hatters, and the County Council is the fire authority, and we'll be discussing the budget in a week's time at Shire Hall. Clearly, between all the political parties, there is a will to keep the fire service as uncut as possible, and in the early years of the next 3-year plan, I believe there will be no significant cuts to the fire service. What is in the 3rd year of that plan is penciled in a couple £1 million of saving for the mergers and the alliances that will take years to develop, and whether they develop or not is not always in the hands of Warwickshire, because it might be Hereford and Worcestershire might or might not want to merge. So there is some uncertainty in the sort of 3rd year of the plan. And the other factor that's very important is the attendance of that second fire engine. We have fire stations and fire engines around Warwickshire that are giving us a very good time for the first fire engine arriving. The issue has been with so few retained fire stations actually always manned, with such a spread out county and issues on motorway crashes, is getting that second fire engine. And I think some of the attendance times have been, I think 15 minutes for the second one. It's been like 76% of the time the second one makes it in the attendance time. So it's the second fire engine that has actually been failing at the moment to always make it. And a lot of politics is in fire, because obviously some of the very rural locations like Fenny Compton of this world are really having difficulty getting enough volunteers to maintain their crews. But they're also sacred cows that people in the south wouldn't want to allow rationalisation of some of the southern fire stations. So I think it's a good topic to talk about, but I think we do need to realise this is a county council function. And the final thing I'll say is, down the line, the big risk is the amalgamation of Bedworth and the Newton Fire Station. And that is something we should be aware of.
I think there's already been proposed and seconded that we'll try and get somebody along for...
Can I just say, Chair, it's inferring on the letter that's in the agenda at page 44 that the consultation period ends on March the 10th. This panel won't meet again before then. So...
it doesn't look as though it's down to us as individuals, Chairman, to follow up and take
well,
part
I think
in that.
that's what the letter was actually.
The letter's trying to drive
yeah.
us towards that.
And just taking something out of turn, we've now also had one, which the Chair will mention shortly, from the ambulance service.
Chair, if it's possible to move our response to this report at all, because it lacks in detail, but I think we all firmly would stand together in believing that there should be no reduction in the services that people in Nuneaton and Bedworth receive. And I would hope that we would send that message clearly back to either the fire service or indeed, depending on what comes forward, the ambulance service. People in Nuneaton and Bedworth have over the last number of years suffered great reductions in a number of services, and we're at breaking point. So I think it's a cheek to propose taking away our fire stations for each town and for us to have any more cuts. I would actually like to see better provision, not less. I hope that that will be fed back, Chair. I'm sure it will be.
Does the panel agree with that?
Yeah.
We can take that forward as part of the recommendations. Also at the same time, chase up individually and our county councillors who's going to deal with this. Councillor Watkins first.
Yeah, Chair. Well, being as that we're not going to be able to do a great deal with this, what I would recommend is that we get our comms team to put this link out so that they put it on Facebook, Twitter, whatever else, to get individuals to answer towards this, and perhaps get a press release out so that something can go out in the press to make sure that the public know that this is what's out there, and that they've invited to go onto this link and have their say. So the more people that know about things, the better, really.
I don't have a problem with that. Councillor Condico?
One thing we should also mention is the arson reduction work, which has been very good. About a year ago, there was a proposal to cut £42,000 from that. The case was made to actually save that, I'm going to say by the Greens, but other parties recognised it was actually a good thing to save, and we had cross-party support to save the funding for the arson reduction team the other year. Now it seems that other parts of Wiltshire want an arson reduction team too, because they can see the valuable work that was being done in actually talking to people, removing potential sources of fire. And so I think it is worth, if we are mentioning services, putting a line in, acknowledging the good work of the arson reduction team and trying to get that continued prevention in there.
With those comments, we can pass them on. This was part of our overall response. As I said before, individually and with GFR county councillors, and get them to try and do something also.
Right, so we will be getting the Commons to put something out
Yeah,
and put a press statement.
I was accepting that
Yeah.
strictly to the council. Because I always think that's a good idea. Right, going to the work programme now. Nope, sorry. Oh, the ONS review. Sorry.
Item 10. Page 45.
Yes, one minute. Just can't see anything left of glasses.
I've got it, yeah. Got it. Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, Chair. We've spent quite some time going through this review, which is as it is. So, we've got the recommendations before you. I'm open to take any questions or anything you've got for me, or any people that was took part in it, and it's as it is.
Any comments from Councillor Conica?
I was going to say it's a very useful review, and I think one of the things that we really were very keen on were things like the forward plan, because actually that gives us this forward visibility, so we can actually know what areas are coming up and we don't get spooked by bits. And yeah, I'd like to commend you how useful it was.
Councillor Watkins, can I there's page 47.
Yeah.
5D. Members recommend management team meetings be published on the new council's portal or website. I thought this was an internal document rather than a public document. Rather than being on the website for everybody. I thought this was an internal document. So it should only be on the council's portal.
I think it's off the website.
I think it's on a typo, Chair.
A typo, is it?
Yeah, the council's portal anyway is something that's
It's
being
council
worked on at
portal
the
rather
minute.
than,
Yeah.
I think it should say on the website, not all the website.
Okay.
And just to update further, Chair, on E, recommendation E, consideration to be given to summary of decisions. I just querying really whether the members are happy with the YouTube, the films going onto YouTube now within about less than 24 hours, generally speaking, whether that is satisfactory or whether you still, whether that summary of decisions was still required.
Chair, if I might, because I think you make a valuable point that we've not actually answered. While on D, on page 47, there's this issue about management team meetings. Are those, you were saying that it should actually read that they should be put on the website?
No. Or it says, or put on the council's portal or the website, and it should have said the new councillor's portal on the website.
Now,
So if all is on, it's
Yeah.
confidential.
So-
Yes, it's confidential. rather than
but to
public.
be clear, those management team meetings, are they for all councillors or?
Yes, and report to, but not
Yeah.
for public.
Okay, that clears up that. In relation to point E, I think the officer makes a really valid point in that you would end up duplicating if our meetings are recorded and cabinet meetings are recorded, etc. The information's out there, and I wouldn't like to see officers' workload increase when we don't need to increase it.
Councillor Condipa?
I was going to totally disagree. The video of last night's meeting was 2.25 hours. If you want to know whether the sheltered housing vote was passed, a tweet is far better than looking at 2.25 hours video. So I think they're two different medias. One media is to actually see who said what and be very involved, and the tweeting and the sort of, and particularly like planning applications. If there's 3 planning applications, you don't want to watch 3 hours of video. You want to know the application on the long sheet was passed or turned down. So tweeting is really important, and it doesn't take a lot of officers' time. So
No, I was meaning more to type up a summary of decision.
Decisions are actually made, Chair.
Yeah,
They're not changed, are they? It's
Chair.
how we relate them to
Councillor
the...
Watkins?
Yeah, it's a working document. You know, this has consideration to be given. You know, if things need to be changed, then let's change them. It's a working document. Let's do it. Let's make the changes now so that it can go forward.
Chair, just to be very clear, because I thought what I was speaking to was this issue about putting them immediately online, because normally they take a few, several days, it says here, to be finalised, and I want to make sure we get them right. I think we do already tweet outcomes of some meetings and election results and all those kind of things. So we do already do this. It wasn't that I don't want it to be done, it was more that I wasn't sure this recommendation was needed, if that makes any sense. However, I think that Councillor Kondaka raises an interesting point. The cabinet meeting did take 2.5 hours. I'm not sure whether 2 hours of that was just Councillor Kondaka. But is it possible for officers to record potentially within the minutes of the meeting or at the time that is on the clock that we move to a new agenda point? And then what you could do is potentially tweet at X minutes in the video, you can go to this particular item. Obviously, you don't want to watch the whole video through and do it, but if you could record...
You could skip Councillor Condipa and go to the real meeting.
But you could record, move from item 7 to item 8 at 8 o'clock.
There is thinking about it, because I put cabinet on this morning from last night, and there is an element in there where it tells you can put comments. So in the comments we could put the time for each agenda decision. So each item, so we could put in the comment, we could say agenda item 10 minute 53.6, and then somebody could fast forward to 53.6 and just see the decision.
Just slide the bar.
Yeah, so by just sliding the bar.
I'm at 56 minutes at
So
the moment.
that's
I've just watched myself twice on the planning meeting where I spent. And told the wife where it was.
The reason
she never went
that
to
we have difficulty with getting the written minutes is because when we write them, what the clerk writes and what maybe sometimes legally we have to put isn't always the same, so we have to check before we make that a final minute. But obviously, if you can point you to where the decision's made, then you hear what's said, and you do with that what you will. It's not the same as a written minute.
Councillor Watkins, you...
Right, so what are you saying? You want that changed too? I don't know. Do you want it changed or do you want it taken out or what?
I think surely we'll take the points and consider putting them in there.
I mean, it says there, consideration to be given to summary decisions for the council and cabinet meetings being tweeted.
Yeah.
So we've given the officers, if we've got an officer there, freedom to tweet things.
Yeah, I think the tweeting element of it is slightly different because it depends whether a comms officer is there.
Yeah.
My clerk isn't able to be taking minutes, concentrating on the meeting and then tweeting.
No.
I think that's unreasonable. So if a comms officer's available and comes to the meeting like they were last night, presumably she tweeted last night while the meeting was going on, I don't know. But I certainly think that I can certainly arrange that when we put the recording of the meeting onto YouTube, that we identify where those decisions are. I can do that. That's not a problem.
Sorted.
The rest of it maybe needs to stay there for consideration by the Central Services portfolio or whoever will get the job ultimately.
Okay. Can you adjust that wording to read that?
Yeah.
Okay then.
Does that assist your?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Finally, Chair, could we just thank Councillor...
I was just about to do that, yeah. I would like to thank the Councillor and the Working Party for all the hard work they've put in, and hopefully we'll get a more up-to-date coverage of what happens within the borough. Okay, thanks. Everybody all right with that? Yeah.
Agreed. It did slim it out a bit, Chair. It did take a few documents out, so
yes,
it was worth doing.
Yes, I think so. At the end of the day, I think we've got a reasonable fit for what we intend to do. So it's always going to be about tweaking rather than tweaking, wasn't it? So along these lines. Right, can we go to the work programme now? We're finally there.
We are at the work programme.
Okay. We've already agreed that the voluntary community sector come back to us. We've got one new item is I've had a request from a member of the public and from our MP in the meeting about the Griff Arm, restoration of the Griff Canal Arm. Does the panel feel as though that should go on as an item in the future? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I seem to recall at the last full council, we resolved to move it to the relevant OSP anyway after Mr. Baxter spoke. I mean, I'm not 100% sure which is the relevant OSP. I had a feeling it might be environment and planning because it was on about potentially fitting in with the borough plan and other aspects of infrastructure and development. But I think the full council already resolved for it to be put onto a work programme.
Well, my indication was that it was requested to come to this panel. So I'm asking this panel whether...
I'm happy for it to go on. I'm just asking for clarification between what full council said and whether this negates it.
No, it's the particular panel that it should be going on, and my information is that it's been requested to come to this panel, and this panel must decide whether it should go to a future work programme. Councillor Condacor.
Yeah, I was going to support that we have a look at it. I was a bit querying the same thing about which panel it goes to, but also which officer would actually then present it. Would it be an economic development officer or would it be a planning policy officer? Yeah, because obviously if we're discussing something in the future, we need someone to sort of facilitate that in terms of telling us what it involves, what it costs and whether to go or not.
I'm sure we'll get a proper officer here at the
Right,
Councillor Grant.
Yes, as Councillor Wilson said, I seem to recall that it was recommended it go to planning and environment because I remember thinking, well, that's what I'm on, so that'll be interesting when that comes forward. The video is online, so you can have a look at that to, just have a look at what was said at the meeting. But that's what I remember being said, and I recall things the same way that Councillor Wilson did.
The appropriate or the relevant OSP. I did ask all the chairs. I think the reason that it was felt that it should come to this panel as opposed to the others was because it was relating to trust status and the forming of a trust and so on, which it was felt would sit here rather than, and obviously the funding and financial side of that, rather than it going to planning and environment, which basically would be dealing with the environmental issues around. That's not to say it doesn't go to both ultimately, but that was why.
Councillor Watkins.
Chair, if I remember right, it was when it was put forward at no cost to the council. So I'm a bit unsure of why it's here, because if it's going to be of no cost to the council, why is it here? I don't know.
Well, the request was made through the cabinet to go through the full council to go to the appropriate committee. This was deemed as the appropriate committee for it to come to, and then when the report comes, we can deal with those other things. Councillor Margaret.
Thank you, Chair. Can I begin by saying I am actually I know it's a procedural issue really that might make me sound rather pedantic. But I do have some concern about a member of the public, especially a member of the public who I understand doesn't live in the borough, having their own report attached to a council agenda. Now, I would love it if all of my residents could put forward their thoughts attached to a council agenda, as I could write my own reports. But I think it's important that in future we have reports that are independently written and objective from officers of this council. I think that is a serious issue, and I'm not happy about Mr. Baxter's report being attached to this agenda. However, that said, this is an interesting issue and one that I think merits consideration by the authority, and I did support that proposal at council, and I think this committee is actually well placed to look at that in the whole rather than from a planning perspective or a leisure perspective or a housing perspective. We've got the ability to look at this in the round, so I think we're well placed to do that, and I welcome that, Chair.
And I shall go back to the point again. It was suggested at the full council that we were to look at this, and it was suggested once again that this would be the right panel for it to have a look at. So that's why the report is attached to this, because it was felt that we were the right people to have a look at it.
Can I make a recommendation? It goes on the forward plan. Whether or not on what time.
The work programme.
Work programme, yeah.
Chair, can I just, for clarity, the point I'm making is
I understand your report, I understand,
this is not a report of this council.
Yes, I understand that.
Can I just make a comment on that? We take requests for the work programme from the public, and generally speaking they would fill out a work programme suggestion form. And I take your point on board. This is what was submitted to the council and sent to me by the managing director. Obviously it would have took me time to then put this onto our form, and I may have got it wrong or not done it right, so I thought it was easier to do it this way. But in hindsight, maybe what I should have done was say, thank you Mr. Baxter for your report, and here is a form for you to fill in for us to take to the committee. But
Well,
it is what it is.
But once again, it goes back to the council decision, and I'm trying to fit it into our work programme in order to get it done.
I think if Shirley had done that, given him the form, it would not have been a friendly act. I mean, fill one out yourself, you take some pretty deep thought at each section of the form to actually get to something which you want to say and draw out the point you're trying to make. But I think this document makes so many references to the borough plan. I just wonder if we shouldn't have a filter of his document through officers who are administering the borough plan to see where it fits in. I mean, he's clearly quoting strategies and so on. If they could quantify also some of the rough financial impacts of what's being asked for, and whether it's feasible, because it does mention the Canal Trust and other people who presumably have funds They would have a volunteer force of some description if they did decide to adopt it as a project. And then at the same time, there are, I understand, commercial interests around this issue that could be developed and make a contribution to the initial rough work and clearance that clearly the canal needs. So if it could be drawn together as a document that just explores the potential of it and the implications for the council itself, I think that would be useful.
We've only got one more meeting, Chair, so it's unlikely to come this side of this year, but obviously it can go forward for consideration on the next work programme.
Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. Next item we'll go here. The Freedom of Information Complaints Working Party was to be set up. We have only 3 members of the Working Party. There's Chris, Jill and John. There's a suggestion that we might need one or more participants. Would anybody like to volunteer, or should we put it out again to see if anybody else would willing to go on this working group? Councillor Condigan.
I think one of the issues in the next 6 weeks is the borough plan consultation and the various budget things. So I think that might be why you're not getting volunteers, because there's actually, and then you've got elections. So it is a crowded time of commitment at the moment.
Depending on how serious the group want it, I'd take it off the March meeting and not carry it forward with the working group at the present moment in time. Move it to later, 2017.
What does the panel think of that? Everybody happy with that?
I think the one on March on the work programme there is for Chris to update on the figures, not the update from the working group. It's just that at the last meeting we asked for members of the working group. I sent out the email.
Yes, we're just trying to get some there.
Yeah.
Chris, do you want to say something?
Well, no, if Chris is just going to update on that. It's just that I don't want to see this freedom of information complaints thing dragging on, because it does need some work.
Yeah.
It's difficult to make a complaint or even make a compliment in the system that we've got at the minute. And a lot of complaints, compliments go astray.
Councillor Madrid.
Thank you, Chair. I see how important it is for members of the public to be able to make a complaint and get issues they've got resolved. I also think if people want to request information, they should have that right. And it's one of the things that a Labour government did that I'm really proud of. One of many things, that is. So I'm happy to put myself forward if it means that the committee is able to continue to undertake its work. As long as the committee meets it, I've got advance notice and can make sure that I'm available work-wise, but I'm happy to continue if that will help the work carry on. If not, I'm happy to go on next municipal year, Chair.
So what's the panel's response to about volunteers better than a conscript?
Yeah, that'll be 4 chairs. Just we have to have 3 to be quorum, and if we get down to just starting with 3, we quite often end up not being quorum. So I like at least 4.
I don't plan to die in between.
5, preferably. Yeah, but things happen.
So we're happy to Council Packgrave. So we'll proceed with this working group. The Council Packgrave being the
We'll make some. I'll send out some dates, Chair.
Yeah. Everybody all right with that? Yeah. Okay. And the last thing I've got here is what have we got? Working. Next meeting.
The next meeting. So we've got the licensing policy. If you remember, we had the child sex exploitation, and there were some issues raised around licensing and whether they were being trained to spot various things. And Linda Downs wanted to update and sort of give a progress report, if you like, to the panel. So they're coming back in March, and there'll be the licensing bit included within that. We've got the integrated performance report. There's Chris's freedom of information and complaints report. You've asked for the voluntary and community bodies to come back in March. I think when I read through the Gresham Road report, it suggested that it should come back. And I've written down there March, June time. Given what was said at the meeting, you might want to leave that to June rather than...
I think the suggestion was that basically it was going to be 12 months, so it'll be the same this year
Do
rather
you
than
want
that.
to do that? Change that to 18?
Agreed, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, that's
To get
no
a chance
problem, we can do that. And I would have thought that was enough for you,
Yeah.
but if you want to look at take something else off your list, that's fine. Can I just ask, the town centre paving maintenance, now I know that was brought up some time ago, and shortly after the meeting I noticed they were all over the town centre doing bits of paving and so on and so forth.
That's because I got sick of me moaning, but...
Right, is it still an issue that it needs to be on here?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, that's fine.
Because we was writing a letter, I think, to the county, or portfolio holder, to ask about the investment in the borough compared to Stratford, Warwick, etc. So we still need to follow that up and see what the comparison is.
So we'll do all that. Anything else, Shirley, in the work group?
Not at the moment, Chair. That looks fine for next meeting.
The last item I've got here is any other item. Planned engagement event by the West Midlands Ambulance Services at Shire Hall on the 30th of January, 11 to 12:30, on their annual quality accounts, but provides opportunity also for councillors to raise the Neaton and Bedworth priorities in regard to this service. So if anybody wishes to go along to Shire Hall and...
Sorry, Jim, just to clarify, does it say on there that it gives an opportunity for the Neaton and Bedworth?
gives an opportunity for everybody.
You may already have received notification of planned engagement events by the ambulance service for their annual quality accounts. If so, apologies for this. Warwickshire County Council will be holding one of these engagement events 11 till 12:30 on the 30th of January at Shire Hall. Am I right to see if you would wish to attend? Sue Green, Deputy Director of Nursing and Quality, will be leading for the ambulance service, and I would like to encourage attendance by elected members and appropriate officers so we are able to raise priorities and issues for our part of the region serviced by West Midlands Ambulance Service.
An open invitation.
It's very disappointing, Chair, that it's in the day, so many members who work are unable to attend. But equally, it's very disappointing, as usual, that things happened in Warwick when they could come to Nuneaton and Bedworth. And, you know, if they came to Nuneaton and Bedworth, I'd even buy them a cup of tea. So maybe we can pass that back to them.
Just as an aside on this, I think somebody ought to go. I can't go, but I recently spent a day at the University Hospital, and so did 3 gentlemen from Polesworth who came actually from the George Eliot. Each one came in a separate ambulance, and a separate ambulance arrived to take each one back.
There you go. Right, on that, I'll finish the meeting and thank everybody for their attendance.
Thank you.
Safe journey back.
I left a tap on the floor at the back. I don't know if it's one of the...
You missed a gossip.
Safe journey back.
Ah.